The recording chamber deep within Kvalari Prime's Grand Council Hall had witnessed 12,000 years of history. Its crystalline walls had absorbed the voices of countless high counselors, preserving declarations of war, treaties of peace, and moments of triumph that defined an empire. Never before had it recorded anything like what was happening now. Counselor Thraxis's hands trembled as he positioned himself before the holocapture array. Outside, through the reinforced windows, the sky burned. Szhen warships descended through the upper atmosphere like falling stars of death, their weapons reducing the elegant spires of the capital city to molten slag. The evacuation sirens had been wailing for 3 hours. He had perhaps minutes before the bunker's shields failed. He was old, even by Kvalari standards. His silver skin had faded to near white, the bioluminescent markings along his throat that once pulsed with vibrant blue now barely flickering. In his 240 years, he had served the Empire faithfully, rising through the ranks of the Council through dedication and wisdom. He had never imagined he would be the one to speak these words. This is High Counselor Thraxis of the Kvalari Empire, transmitting on all available frequencies to Earth. His voice cracked. He forced himself to continue. 3 years ago, you offered us your hand in friendship. We refused. We believed ourselves above the need for allies, especially those we deemed primitive. We were fools. The Szhen Dominion has shattered our fleets, burned our worlds, and killed billions of our people. Our empire, which stood for 12 millennia, will fall within weeks. We have no right to ask this, but we are asking anyway. Please, if humanity's offer of alliance still stands, we desperately need your help. The building shook. Thraxis steadied himself against the console and added one final sentence. We were wrong about you. We were wrong about everything. He transmitted the message on every frequency humanity had provided during that diplomatic meeting 3 years ago, praying to gods he had stopped believing in decades past that someone would hear it. Then he gathered what remained of the council and fled to the evacuation ships, watching his homeworld burn behind him. 3 years earlier, the Grand Council Hall had looked very different. The crystalline spires caught the light of Kvalari Prime's twin suns, refracting it into cascading rainbows that danced across the assembled counselors. It was a place of beauty and power, symbolizing everything the Kvalari Empire represented: elegance, advancement, and an unbroken chain of civilization stretching back into antiquity. Ambassador David Reeves stood in the center of the hall, acutely aware that he and his small diplomatic team were the first humans most of these beings had ever seen in person. The Kvalari were tall and slender, their silver skin marked with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to convey emotion and emphasis as they spoke. They wore flowing robes of material that shifted colors like oil on water. Everything about them spoke of refinement. Reeves knew how humans must appear to them. Shorter, heavier, built for a world with crushing gravity and savage weather. Even in his formal diplomatic attire, he felt rough and primitive in this place of impossible beauty. High Counselor Vethren sat upon the central platform, his luminescent markings pulsing a steady amber. He was ancient even by Kvalari standards, having served the Empire for nearly 3 centuries. His wisdom was legendary, his dedication to Kvalari independence absolute. Ambassador Reeves, Vethren's voice resonated through the chamber with musical quality. Earth's proposal has been reviewed by this council. You offer military alliance, technological exchange, and cultural cooperation. You suggest that our 2 civilizations would benefit from mutual defense arrangements and shared knowledge. That's correct, High Counselor, Reeves replied. He had rehearsed this moment for months, knowing everything depended on these next few minutes. Humanity believes that the galaxy is becoming more dangerous. We've encountered hostile forces, territorial disputes, and emerging threats. No single civilization, no matter how advanced, can face these challenges alone. Together, we could ensure our mutual security and prosperity. Thraxis, then merely a junior counselor, watched from his seat near the back. He had reviewed Earth's file extensively. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel only 2 centuries ago. Their technology was functional but crude compared to Kvalari energy manipulation systems. Their homeworld was a nightmare of tectonic instability, violent weather, and dangerous predators. The fact that humans had evolved at all was remarkable. That they had reached the stars was impressive. But Alliance, Vethren's markings shifted to a cool blue. Ambassador, the Kvalari Empire has endured for 12,000 years. We have defended ourselves through countless conflicts, maintained our independence through wisdom and strength. Our technology is among the most advanced in known space. Our culture has produced achievements in art, science, and philosophy that span millennia. He paused, and his next words, while polite, carried unmistakable weight. We appreciate Earth's offer, but we must question what benefit such an alliance would provide to the Kvalari people. Reeves felt the rejection coming but pressed forward. High Counselor, humanity may be young, but we've learned hard lessons. We've survived extinction-level events on our own world. We've overcome our own tendencies towards self-destruction. What we lack in elegance, we compensate for in adaptability and determination. And perhaps most importantly, we understand the value of standing together. These are admirable qualities, Vethren acknowledged. But the Kvalari have survived through self-reliance. External entanglements, no matter how well-intentioned, inevitably lead to complications. We prefer to maintain our sovereignty and independence. The vote was swift and unanimous. The Kvalari Council declined Earth's offer of alliance. Reeves accepted the decision with grace, though Thraxis could see the disappointment in the human's eyes. As the ambassador prepared to depart, he turned back to address the council one final time. High Counselor, members of the council, I respect your decision. But I want to leave you with one thought. The offer remains open indefinitely. Should the Kvalari Empire ever find itself in need of friends, Earth will remember its neighbors. We hope you'll remember us as well. It was the standard diplomatic closing, but something in Reeves's tone made Thraxis uneasy. The human wasn't angry or resentful. He simply sounded sad, as if he knew something they didn't. 6 months after the rejection, the first reports reached Kvalari space. A new power had emerged in the outer regions, calling itself the Szhen Dominion. 3 minor civilizations in the border territories had gone silent, their worlds no longer responding to communications. Survey ships sent to investigate found nothing but dead planets, their surfaces scoured clean of all biological material, their orbital infrastructure stripped away. The Council reviewed the reports with mild concern but little alarm. The outer regions had always been unstable, full of minor powers squabbling over resources and territory. Whatever this Szhen Dominion was, it operated far from Kvalari space. It was, as Vethren noted, a problem for lesser species to resolve. Thraxis, reviewing the intelligence data in his private chambers, was less certain. The pattern disturbed him. The Szhen hadn't conquered these worlds, they had consumed them. Every trace of biological life removed, every useful resource stripped away, every structure dismantled. It spoke of something beyond typical conquest. It suggested an entity that viewed other species not as enemies or rivals, but as raw materials. He brought his concerns to Vethren, who dismissed them with the confidence of 3 centuries of experience. The Kvalari Empire has faced threats before, Thraxis. Our fleets are more than capable of defending our territory. Should this dominion turn its attention toward us, they will discover we are not minor border worlds to be easily taken. 18 months after Earth's rejected offer, the Szhen Dominion made contact with the Kvalari Empire. They did so by obliterating 3 border colonies without warning, communication, or mercy. Fleet Marshal Kethys stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Radiant Destiny, staring at the tactical display with mounting horror. The colonies of Vexar, Thornith, and Kelnar had simply ceased to exist. Over 400 million Kvalari, vaporized by orbital bombardment so intense it had cracked planetary crusts. The attack had been swift, coordinated, and absolute. Kethys was a career military officer, tall even by Kvalari standards, his luminescent markings permanently set to the deep red of a warrior caste. He had trained for defensive operations his entire life, studying the tactics and strategies that had protected the Empire for millennia. Nothing in his training had prepared him for an enemy that struck without warning, without demands, without any apparent goal beyond annihilation. "Marshal, we're receiving sensor data from automated defense platforms," his tactical officer reported. "The attacking vessels. There were thousands of them. They appeared via jump drive, established orbital positions, and began bombardment within minutes. The colonies had no time to evacuate. Ship configurations. Inconsistent, sir. The vessels appear to be of various designs as if assembled from different species technology, but they operated with perfect coordination." Kethys felt cold understanding settle in his chest. "They're not a conventional empire. They're a collective. Every species they consume adds to their resources and knowledge." The Szhen Dominion, his intelligence officers soon confirmed, was indeed a hive-mind entity. It had started as a single species, the Szhen themselves, but had long ago transcended its biological origins. Now it spread like a plague across the galaxy, assimilating biological material, technology, and resources from every civilization it encountered. Each conquered world made it stronger. Each absorbed species added new capabilities to its collective consciousness. And it had decided the Kvalari Empire would be its next harvest. The war began in earnest within weeks. The Kvalari fleet, while smaller than the incoming Szhen swarms, possessed superior technology and tactical training. In the early engagements, Kethys' forces achieved impressive victories. The Battle of Thorian Expanse saw a Kvalari battle group destroy a Szhen fleet 3 times its size through precision targeting and superior energy weapons. The defense of Kelrak Station demonstrated Kvalari shield technology, holding against sustained bombardment that would have obliterated lesser installations. Vethren addressed the Empire from the Grand Council Hall, his markings pulsing confident gold. "The Szhen Dominion has learned what countless aggressors before them discovered. The Kvalari do not fall easily. Our fleets are decimating their forces. Our world stands strong. This threat will pass, as all threats before it have passed." But Thraxis, now elevated to senior counselor after the death of his predecessor in the Vexar attack, studied the casualty reports with growing dread. Yes, they were winning individual battles, but the Szhen kept coming. For every enemy ship destroyed, 2 more appeared in the next engagement. The hive mind felt no morale, knew no fear, acknowledged no setback as anything but data to incorporate into its next attack. The war ground on. Months turned into a year. The Kvalari won battles and lost worlds. Their fleets, spread across dozens of systems, fought with skill and courage, but they were being bled dry victory by victory. Kethys met with Thraxis in the war room deep beneath the council hall. The marshal's markings, once proud red, had faded to dull orange. He had not slept properly in weeks. "We've lost 12 colonies," he said without preamble. 15 billion dead. "My fleets are at 60% strength, and that number drops with every engagement. We're killing them, Counselor, but they have ships to spare. We don't." "What do you recommend?" Thraxis asked, though he dreaded the answer. "We need reinforcements, allies, other species with fleets who can share the burden of defense." Thraxis had been expecting this. He had already made quiet inquiries to neighboring powers. "I've contacted the Torvan Collective and the Marathi Commonwealth. Both declined to assist. They fear that involvement will make them the Shen's next target. Then we need to look further afield. You're suggesting we contact Earth?" It wasn't a question. Kethys' markings flashed frustrated red. "I'm suggesting we contact anyone who might help. The humans offered alliance. Perhaps that offer still stands." Thraxis brought the proposal to High Counselor Vethren, who reacted as if Thraxis had suggested surrender. "Absolutely not. The Kvalari Empire does not beg for help from primitives. We have fought wars before. We have endured losses before. We will prevail through Kvalari strength and Kvalari wisdom as we always have. High Counselor, with respect, we have never faced an enemy like this. The Szhen don't negotiate, don't tire, don't stop. They will keep coming until we're extinct or they are." Vethren's markings blazed angry orange. "Then we will fight until one of those outcomes occurs. But we will do so as Kvalari, maintaining our dignity and independence. I will not see this empire reduced to begging newcomers for salvation. This discussion is closed. The Szhen launched their next major offensive 3 weeks later. 4 core Kvalari worlds came under simultaneous assault. Kethys' fleet, already stretched thin, could not defend them all. He made the agonizing choice to abandon 2 worlds to reinforcement the defense of the others. Over 7 billion Kvalari died in the evacuations that followed, as the abandoned worlds fell to Szhen bombardment. The empire began to contract. Outer colonies were evacuated, their populations fleeing toward the core systems. Refugee ships clogged the space lanes. The economy, already strained by the war effort, began to collapse under the weight of displaced billions. Food shortages spread. Civil unrest flared on worlds hosting refugees. And still the Szhen came. Thraxis stood in the council hall, watching as Vethren addressed the assembled counselors. The High Counselor had aged visibly in recent months, his markings dim and irregular, but his voice remained strong, defiant. "We stand at a crossroads," Vethren declared. "Behind us lies 12,000 years of Kvalari civilization. Before us lies an enemy that seeks to erase that civilization from existence. Some have suggested we seek help from outside powers, that we compromise our independence for the promise of military support. I say to you now, such a path leads only to subjugation under a different name. Better to fall as Kvalari than to survive as vassals." The words rang hollow to Thraxis. He had spent his entire life serving the Empire, believing in its strength and wisdom. But wisdom meant recognizing when circumstances changed. Pride was a luxury they could no longer afford. The debate was cut short by emergency alerts. Szhen forces had broken through the defensive perimeter around Vethren's personal transport convoy. The High Counselor was evacuating a threatened world when Szhen raiders appeared without warning, bypassing the fleet through what appeared to be experimental jump technology. They struck the transport ship with concentrated fire, overwhelming its shields in seconds. High Counselor Vethren, who had led the Kvalari Empire for over a century, died when his ship exploded. By law of succession, Thraxis became the new High Counselor. He held the position for exactly 4 hours before making the decision that would define his legacy. The council met in emergency session. Kethys provided the military briefing with brutal honesty. "We have 3, perhaps 4 weeks before Szhen forces reach Kvalari Prime. Our remaining fleets can delay them but not stop them. We are out of time and out of options." Thraxis looked at the faces of the assembled counselors. Some were old like him. Others were young, elevated rapidly due to casualties among their predecessors. All looked exhausted, traumatized, defeated. He thought of Vethren's final speech about falling as Kvalari rather than surviving as vassals. But he also thought of the billions of refugees crowding the remaining worlds, of the children who would never reach adulthood if the Szhen arrived, of 12,000 years of civilization about to be erased from the universe. Pride was a luxury. Survival was a necessity. 3 years ago, Thraxis said quietly, humanity offered us alliance. We refused, believing ourselves above the need for such arrangements. We were wrong. Marshal Kethys, do we still have the communication frequencies Earth provided? We do, High Counselor. Then I will send a message. If humanity chooses to ignore us, we will face the Szhen alone as Vethren wished. But I will not let this empire die without at least asking for help. He looked around the chamber. Does anyone object? No one spoke. Thraxis descended to the recording chamber and composed the message that would either save his civilization or confirm its doom. When he finished, he transmitted it on every frequency, every channel, every method of communication humanity had provided 3 years earlier. Then he waited. The message traveled through subspace relays, crossing the vast distance between Kvalari space and Earth's solar system. It arrived at the United Earth Command Center in Geneva at 3:47 local time, immediately flagged as priority diplomatic contact. By 400, Admiral Marcus Trent was in the command center, reviewing the transmission. Trent was 58 years old, a career military officer who had risen through the ranks during Earth's tumultuous unification period. He had fought in the resource wars, commanded peacekeeping operations during the continental conflicts, and helped establish Earth's first deep space fleet. His face was weathered, his hair gray, his eyes carrying the weight of hard decisions made over decades of service. He watched Thraxis's message 3 times, noting the trembling hands, the burning sky visible through the windows, the desperation in the Kvalari counselor's voice. When it finished, he turned to his staff. "Get me President Adami, and start running fleet deployment scenarios for Kvalari space." "Sir, they rejected our alliance offer," his chief of staff pointed out. "I'm aware, Commander. Start running the scenarios anyway." Within an hour, Earth's leadership convened in emergency session. The debate was fierce and predictable. Some argued for ignoring the Kvalari's plea, citing the rejection and questioning why Earth should risk its forces for a species that had deemed them unworthy. Others advocated for a token response, sending minimal forces to maintain diplomatic appearance without real commitment. Trent listened to the arguments, then requested permission to speak. 3 years ago, Ambassador Reeves offered the Kvalari our friendship. They declined. That was their right. Now they're facing extinction and they've asked for help. This is our choice. We can let them die, prove that our offer was conditional on their acceptance, show the galaxy that Earth only helps those who never wronged us. Or we can demonstrate that when humanity offers friendship, we mean it, even to those who rejected us. Admiral, you're proposing we risk a significant portion of our fleet for a species that insulted us, a council member objected. No, ma'am. I'm proposing we risk our fleet because that's what civilized species do. Because if we only help those who have always been our friends, we're no better than the Szhen who are killing them. Trent pulled up tactical displays. The Kvalari situation is dire. If we're going to help, it needs to be now, and it needs to be substantial. Half measures will just waste lives without changing the outcome. President Adami studied the displays, then looked at Trent. "What are you recommending, Admiral?" "Third, Fifth, and Seventh Fleets. Nearly 40% of our deep space naval capability. It's a massive commitment, but anything less won't make a difference." The room erupted in objections. 40% of Earth's fleet sent to save a species that had rejected them. The political implications alone were staggering. Trent waited for the noise to die down. "I fought in the resource wars. I've seen what happens when civilizations turn inward, when they refuse to help others because it's inconvenient or dangerous or politically difficult. We built the United Earth government on the principle that humanity could be better than our worst instincts. This is where we prove it." The vote was close. In the end, Earth's leadership authorized the deployment by a margin of 3 votes. Trent immediately initiated mobilization. The 3rd, 5th, and 7th Fleets began preparations for rapid deployment. It was the largest military operation in Earth's history, involving over 300 vessels and 200,000 personnel. The logistics alone were staggering, but Trent had trained for this. Earth's military doctrine, developed through centuries of conflict on a dangerous world, emphasized rapid deployment and overwhelming response. While other species built elegant fleets for measured engagements, humans built armadas designed to arrive fast and hit hard. He addressed his assembled fleet commanders via secure channel. "Ladies and gentlemen, 3 years ago the Kvalari rejected Earth's offer of friendship. They called us primitive, deemed us unworthy of alliance. Today we're going to save them anyway. Not because they deserve it, not because we'll get something out of it, but because this is who we are. When someone calls for help, humans answer. That's what makes us different." The fleets used experimental jump drives, dangerous technology that compressed travel time by pushing reactors beyond safe limits. It was risky, but speed mattered more than safety. They would reach Kvalari space in 5 days instead of the 3 weeks conventional FTL would require. As Earth's armada jumped into the void, Thraxis waited on Kvalari Prime, watching the Szhen forces advance system by system toward his homeworld. Each day brought new reports of fallen colonies, destroyed fleets, billions more dead. He had received no response from Earth. Perhaps the message never arrived. Perhaps humanity had simply ignored it. Perhaps they would die alone after all, as Vethren had predicted. Kethis's forces fought delaying actions, sacrificing ships to buy hours. The marshal himself led from the front, his flagship damaged in 3 separate engagements. He was preparing for a final stand at Kvalari Prime when his sensor officer reported something impossible. "Marshal, we're detecting massive jump signatures at the system edge. Multiple fleets, unknown configuration." Kethys felt his markings pulse with faint hope. "Can you identify them?" The officer worked frantically, then looked up with wonder in his eyes. "Sir, they're human. 3 entire fleets. They're broadcasting United Earth identification codes." Thraxis stood in the war room when the message came through. A human voice, calm and professional, speaking accented but fluent Kvalari. "This is Admiral Marcus Trent of the United Earth Forces, commanding 3rd, 5th, and 7th Fleets. We received your message, High Counselor. We're here to help." Thraxis's hands trembled again, but this time from relief rather than fear. He opened a channel. "Admiral Trent, we didn't know if you would come. After how we treated your ambassador," Trent's voice cut through. "High Counselor, save the apologies for when your people are safe. Right now I need a tactical briefing. Where do you need us most?" The pragmatism steadied Thraxis. This was not a time for guilt or gratitude. This was a time for survival. "Marshal Kethys will provide full intelligence." "Admiral, the Szhen are about to assault Kvalari Prime itself. If the homeworld falls, our civilization dies with it." "Understood. We're moving to defensive positions now." Trent out. The human fleets accelerated into Kvalari space with speed that shocked Kvalari observers. Their ships were blocky, inelegant compared to Kvalari crystalline designs, but they moved with purpose and precision. Within hours, Trent had established command coordination with Kethys, and the 2 military leaders began planning the defense of Kvalari Prime. Their first meeting was conducted via holographic communication, Kethys aboard his flagship and Trent on the bridge of the UES Valiant. The 2 officers studied each other across the light years, each recognizing a fellow warrior despite their differences. "Marshal Kethys, Admiral Trent," Thraxis made introductions. "The fate of my people rests with both of you." Kethys began the briefing with characteristic efficiency. "The Szhen have committed over 600 vessels to this assault. Our remaining fleet numbers 140 ships. Even with your 300 vessels, Admiral, we're outnumbered." "Numbers aren't everything," Trent replied, studying the tactical displays. "Tell me about Szhen combat doctrine." "They fight through overwhelming force and sustained assault. They're willing to accept enormous casualties to achieve objectives. Individual ships are competent but not exceptional. Their strength lies in coordination and numbers." Trent nodded. "And Kvalari doctrine, precision engagement at range, superior shield technology, and energy weapons designed for efficiency. We've achieved favorable exchange rates in most engagements, but we lack the numbers to capitalize on tactical victories." "I see the problem. You're fighting clean, trying to minimize losses. They're fighting dirty, accepting losses you're not willing to take." Trent pulled up deployment maps. "Marshal, with respect, this isn't the time for elegant warfare. The Szhen want a war of attrition. Let's give them one they can't win, but we do it our way." Kethys felt his markings flicker uncertain yellow. "What are you proposing?" "Humans learned warfare on a planet that tried to kill us every day. We don't fight clean or elegant, we fight to win." Trent highlighted the defensive perimeter. "We're going to position your fleets here in supporting roles. You'll provide precision fire and electronic warfare support. My forces will take the vanguard. When the Szhen come in for their swarm tactics, we're going to hit them so hard in close quarters they won't know what happened." "Close quarters combat is extremely dangerous," Kethys objected. "Casualty rates will be high, I know, but Marshal, we didn't come here to protect our own ships. We came here to save your world. You have the technology and precision. We have the numbers and the willingness to get our hands bloody. Let's use both." Kethys looked to Thraxis, who made the decision. "Do it. Admiral Trent, whatever you need, whatever approach you believe will work, you have full authorization." The Szhen assault began 36 hours later. Their fleet emerged from jump space in a formation that had destroyed dozens of worlds. A massive sphere of ships, each layer supporting the others, designed to envelop and overwhelm defensive positions through sheer density of fire. The combined human Kvalari fleet waited in high orbit around Kvalari Prime. The Kvalari vessels maintained their traditional positions, forming a defensive screen with overlapping shield coverage and established firing lanes. The human ships positioned themselves in the forward arc, their blocky hulls bristling with weapons that looked crude compared to Kvalari energy cannons, but carried the unmistakable promise of violence. Aboard the Valiant, Trent watched the Szhen approach with calm assessment. His crew worked with practiced efficiency, weapons officers calling out targeting solutions, engineering teams monitoring reactor output, damage control parties standing ready for the inevitable casualties. All ships, this is Trent. Remember your training. We're not here to dance with them. We're here to break their formation and make them regret every meter they advance. Kvalari ships will support from range. We're going in close. Engage at will when they enter weapons range. The Szhen fleet accelerated, moving to envelop the defenders. Their tactics were simple and effective, present so many targets simultaneously that defensive fire couldn't address them all, then systematically destroy the defenders through coordinated strikes. They had never encountered humans before. The human fleet didn't wait for the Szhen to close. As soon as the enemy entered long-range missile range, Trent's ships launched a devastating alpha strike. Thousands of missiles, each carrying nuclear warheads, streaked toward the Szhen formation. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't efficient. It was brutally effective. The Szhen point defense systems shot down most of the missiles, but not all. Nuclear flowers bloomed across their formation, vaporizing dozens of ships and disrupting their careful coordination. Before they could recover, the human fleet charged directly into the disrupted formation. Kethys watched from his flagship in amazed horror. The humans were flying straight into the enemy formation at ramming speed, their shields forward, their weapons firing at point-blank range. It violated every principle of naval warfare the Kvalari had developed over millennia. It was reckless, aggressive, and utterly terrifying. It was also working. Human ships crashed into Szhen formations like hammers into glass. The blocky human vessels, built to survive atmospheric re-entry on a high-gravity world, proved devastatingly effective as bludgeons. When human ships collided with Szhen vessels, the Szhen came apart. When Szhen weapons struck human shields, the humans absorbed the damage and kept coming. And behind the human assault, Kvalari ships fired with precision they'd honed over centuries. With the Szhen formation shattered by human aggression, Kvalari energy weapons found targets with devastating accuracy. Every shot counted, every beam found a critical system, every volley destroyed ships that were reeling from human attacks. The combination of human brutality and Kvalari precision proved synergistic in ways neither species had anticipated. The Szhen, designed to overwhelm through numbers, found themselves caught between an enemy that hit harder than they could endure and an enemy that struck more precisely than they could defend against. But the cost was severe. Human ships took terrible damage. The UES Singapore rammed a Szhen heavy cruiser at full thrust, destroying both vessels and killing all 3,000 crew members. The UES Wellington's shields failed under sustained fire, and Szhen weapons tore through its hull. The UES Kathmandu suffered a reactor breach and detonated, taking 2 enemy ships with it. Trent watched good ships die and forced himself to focus on the larger battle. This was the calculus of war he had learned decades ago. Some would die so that others might live. The human crews knew this. They had volunteered knowing it. Every ship lost bought time for Kvalari Prime below, bought survival for billions. The Szhen hive mind, encountering resistance unlike anything in its records, adapted its tactics. Ships began targeting the human vessels specifically, recognizing them as the greater threat. The swarm reformed, flowing around human positions, trying to isolate and destroy them through concentrated fire. Kethys saw the shift and acted immediately. All Kvalari ships, target vessels engaging human forces. Priority fire on anything threatening Admiral Trent's fleet. The combined coordination deepened. Human ships would charge in, disrupting formations. Szhen vessels would swarm to contain them. Kvalari ships would then strike from range, destroying the Szhen before they could bring their numbers to bear. Then the pattern would repeat, each cycle destroying more Szhen vessels, each iteration more coordinated than the last. Aboard the Valiant, Trent's tactical officer shouted urgent warnings. "Admiral, Szhen forces are concentrating fire on our position. We're being targeted for elimination. Let them come. All weapons, continuous fire. Engineering everything you have to forward shields." The Valiant shook as Szhen weapons hammered its defenses. Alarms wailed. Crew members died at their stations as power conduits exploded. But Trent stood firm on the bridge, calling out targeting priorities, coordinating with Kethys' forces, holding the line because if he fell back, the entire defense would collapse. Then Kethys arrived, his flagship and 3 Kvalari battle cruisers positioning themselves around the Valiant, their shields extending to cover the human vessel. "Admiral, your ship has done enough. Let us provide support." Trent wanted to object but recognized wisdom when he saw it. "Appreciated, Marshal. Redirecting fire to support your position." The battle raged for 7 hours. In that time, the sky above Kvalari Prime became a graveyard. Hundreds of ships, Szhen and human and Kvalari, died in fire and violence. Debris rained into the upper atmosphere, burning like falling stars. Communications channels filled with final transmissions, damage reports, desperate calls for support. Through it all, Trent and Kethys coordinated their forces with increasing synchronicity. The cultural differences that had seemed so vast melted away in the crucible of combat. What mattered was trust, capability, and shared purpose. The human and Kvalari commanders developed a rhythm, each understanding the other's tactics, each compensating for the other's weaknesses. The turning point came when Trent's intelligence officer identified a massive vessel at the rear of the Szhen formation. "Admiral, that ship is broadcasting on frequencies consistent with hive mind coordination. It's directing the entire assault." "Their command Nexus," Trent understood immediately. "If we take it out, the local hive mind loses coordination. It's positioned in the center of their remaining forces. We'd have to fight through hundreds of vessels to reach it." Trent pulled up the tactical display. The Nexus ship was enormous, easily 3 times the size of his flagship, surrounded by defensive layers of smaller vessels. Reaching it would require a direct assault through the heart of the enemy formation. Ships would die. Hundreds of crew members would die. But if they succeeded, the battle was won. If they failed, they were lost anyway. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Trent. We've identified the Szhen command ship. I'm leading a strike force directly into their formation to destroy it. Who's with me?" 12 ships volunteered immediately. Trent selected the 8 in best condition and formed his strike force. To Kethys, he transmitted a private message. "Marshal, if we don't make it, the defense is yours. Hold this world for us." "Admiral, this is suicide." "No, Marshal, this is war. There's a difference." The strike force accelerated toward the Szhen Nexus, weapons blazing. The enemy recognized the threat and moved to intercept, hundreds of ships converging on the human vessels. What followed was perhaps the most brutal engagement in the entire battle. The UES Nairobi died first, overwhelmed by concentrated fire. The UES Lagos followed seconds later, its reactor detonating in a blast that took 3 Szhen ships with it. The UES Dakar and UES Kinshasa formed a protective screen for the Valiant, absorbing fire meant for the flagship. Trent's ship shook continuously. The bridge lights flickered. Crew members called out casualties and system failures, but they kept moving forward, kept firing, kept advancing toward the Nexus ship that loomed ahead like a mountain of metal and malice. "We're through their outer perimeter," the tactical officer reported. "Nexus ship in direct weapons range. All forward batteries target that ship's core. Fire everything." The Valiant's weapons unleashed hell. Nuclear missiles, kinetic penetrators, energy weapons humanity had developed through centuries of warfare on a hostile world, all focused on the Nexus ship's central structure. The other surviving strike force vessels added their fire, concentrating damage on a single point. The Nexus ship's shields held initially, absorbing the punishment. But human weapons were designed for sustained fire, for wearing down defenses through relentless application of overwhelming force. The shields flickered, weakened, failed. "Breaching teams, your go," Trent ordered. Marines launched from the surviving strike force vessels, using armored shuttles to cross the gap while the ships maintained covering fire. They hit the Nexus ship's hull with shaped charges, blew holes through armor plating, and poured into the vessel's interior. The fighting inside was vicious. Szhen biomechanical drones defended every corridor, every chamber. Human Marines advanced with the same brutal efficiency their ships had demonstrated, using explosives and heavy weapons in close quarters that would have horrified Kvalari sensibilities. They weren't trying to capture the ship. They were trying to destroy it. Lieutenant Kowalski led the assault team toward the core, following energy signatures that indicated the Nexus Coordination Center. Her team took casualties at every junction, but they kept moving, kept fighting. When they reached the central chamber, they found it, a massive organic technological hybrid, pulsing with energy, coordinating thousands of vessels across the battle space. "Plant the charges," Kowalski ordered. "We've got maybe 2 minutes before reinforcements arrive." Her demolition specialist placed fusion charges at key structural points, working with speed born of desperation. Around them, the chamber thrummed with power, and Kowalski could swear she heard voices in the vibrations. Thousands of consciousnesses merged into one screaming collective. Charges set. 30 seconds to detonation. The team ran, fighting their way back toward their entry point as the countdown ticked away. Kowalski made it to the breach as the charges detonated. The explosion tore through the Nexus ship's core, disrupting the fusion reactors, setting off a cascade failure that no amount of Szhen adaptation could stop. The Nexus ship came apart from the inside, a ship-killing explosion that vaporized Lieutenant Kowalski, her team, and thousands of tons of Szhen biotechnology in a flash of light that could be seen from Kvalari Prime's surface. The effect on the Szhen fleet was immediate and catastrophic. Without local coordination, the hive mind's forces became disorganized, ships operating on individual protocols rather than unified strategy. Some continued fighting. Others attempted to withdraw. Many simply held position, waiting for instructions that would never come. Kethys recognized the moment and acted. "All Kvalari forces, the enemy has lost coordination. Concentrate fire and destroy them systematically. Show no mercy." The combined fleet fell upon the disorganized Szhen with methodical efficiency. Without their numerical coordination advantage, the individual ships were vulnerable. Kvalari precision found target after target. Human weapons pulverized anything that attempted to reform. In 90 minutes, the battle was effectively over. In 3 hours, the last Szhen vessel in the system had been destroyed. Victory, but at a cost that left both species reeling. Thraxis stood in the war room, receiving the damage reports with numb horror. The human fleet had lost 23 vessels and over 15,000 personnel. Kvalari losses were 12 ships and 8,000 crew. Together, they had destroyed over 600 Szhen vessels, saving Kvalari Prime and likely preventing the total extinction of his species. But the numbers couldn't capture the reality. 15,000 humans who had traveled across the galaxy to save people who had rejected them. People like Lieutenant Kowalski, who had given her life destroying the Nexus core. The UES Singapore's crew, who had rammed an enemy cruiser to break the formation. The UES Wellington's personnel who had died when their shields failed. They had died for strangers, for a species that had called them primitive. Trent's flagship, badly damaged but intact, began rescue operations immediately. Human and Kvalari vessels worked together, pulling survivors from wrecked ships, establishing medical triage stations, coordinating damage control. The same coordination they had shown in battle now applied to saving lives. On the 3rd day after the battle, Thraxis traveled personally to the Valiant. The human flagship bore scars across its hull, entire sections exposed to vacuum, but it remained operational through what appeared to be sheer determination and excessive redundancy in every system. Admiral Trent met him in what had been a conference room and was now serving as a temporary command center, since the actual bridge was undergoing critical repairs. The human looked exhausted, his uniform stained, his face lined with fatigue. He had not slept since the battle, coordinating rescue efforts and fleet reorganization. "High Counselor," Trent greeted him formally. "Welcome aboard." Thraxis had prepared speeches, elaborate apologies, formal expressions of gratitude, diplomatic acknowledgments of debt. All of them seemed inadequate now, standing in this damaged ship surrounded by crew members who had nearly died protecting his world. "Admiral Trent, I came to apologize. 3 years ago, we rejected your offer of friendship. We called your species primitive, deemed you unworthy of alliance with the Kvalari Empire. We were wrong. We were arrogant fools who couldn't see that true civilization isn't measured in years or elegance, but in the willingness to stand for others even when it costs you dearly." Trent studied him for a moment, then gestured to chairs that looked too small for Kvalari physiology, but Thraxis sat anyway. "High Counselor, you called, that's what mattered. Recognizing when you need help, admitting when you were wrong, asking for assistance despite your pride. That took more courage than you know. Your people died for us, thousands of them, for a species that insulted you." "They died doing their duty," Trent replied quietly. "Protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, that's what we train for, what we prepare for. The Kvalari didn't reject humanity, High Counselor. You rejected a political arrangement. When you called for help, it wasn't politics anymore. It was people in danger. That's a very different thing." Thraxis felt his markings pulse a deep, respectful blue. "The Kvalari Council wishes to offer a formal alliance. Military cooperation, technological exchange, cultural programs, everything Earth originally proposed and more. We understand we have no right to ask after refusing you once, but—" "We accept," Trent interrupted. "On one condition. Anything. This isn't just about Earth and Kvalari anymore. The galaxy has a lot of species who need help, a lot of civilizations who can't defend themselves against threats like the Szhen. Next time someone makes a desperate call, I want to see Kvalari ships standing beside us. Your precision and our determination, your technology and our will, together." Thraxis felt something shift in his understanding of what alliance actually meant. Not subordination, not dependence, partnership. "The Kvalari Empire stood alone for 12,000 years, Admiral. Perhaps it's time we learned to stand together." Over the following weeks, the alliance took formal shape. Kvalari engineers studied human ship designs, marveling at the redundancy and durability built into every system. Human scientists examined Kvalari energy manipulation technology, seeing applications that would revolutionize Earth's power generation. Cultural exchanges began, both species discovering that beneath the physical differences lay similar values: courage, loyalty, the willingness to sacrifice for others. Marshal Kethys and Admiral Trent developed a genuine friendship, the two military officers finding common ground in their shared profession. They began developing joint tactical doctrines, combining Kvalari precision with human aggression into something neither could achieve alone. The Szhen Dominion, having lost an entire assault fleet, withdrew from Kvalari space. The hive mind recognized that this combination of species posed a threat it couldn't easily overcome. Other powers in the region took notice. Humanity had arrived as a major player in galactic affairs, and they had done so by protecting others rather than conquering them. 6 months after the Battle of Kvalari Prime, a distress signal reached the combined Earth-Kvalari monitoring stations. The Telrani Federation, a minor power in a neighboring sector, was under attack by raiders who were enslaving populations and strip-mining worlds. They broadcast a desperate plea for assistance. The response was swift. A combined task force, 15 human ships and 12 Kvalari vessels, jumped to the Telrani system within 48 hours. Admiral Trent commanded the human forces. Marshal Kethys led the Kvalari contingent. High Counselor Thraxis observed from a command ship, wanting to witness this new chapter in his civilization's history. The raiders, expecting no resistance, found themselves facing a coordinated assault that gave them no chance. Human ships charged their formations. Kvalari weapons picked off fleeing vessels. In 6 hours, the raiders were destroyed or scattered, and the Telrani Federation was saved. The Telrani president, a small reptilian being, broadcast thanks to the rescue force. "We didn't know if anyone would come. We're not a powerful species. We have nothing to offer in payment." Trent responded before Thraxis could. "You don't need to offer payment. You needed help." "We answered. That's what civilized species do. Thraxis watched the exchange and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: pride. Not the old Kvalari pride in isolation and self-sufficiency, but a new pride in standing for something larger than themselves. Kvalari Empire had endured for 12,000 years, but it had taken humanity to show them what true strength looked like. Aboard the Valiant, Trent stood on his repaired bridge, looking at the tactical display showing human and Kvalari ships operating in perfect coordination. Kethys appeared on the communication screen, his markings pulsing satisfied blue. "Another successful operation, Admiral." "That it was, Marshal. Think there are more species out there who need help?" "Without question." "The galaxy is a dangerous place." Trent smiled, the expression carrying both warmth and determination. "Then I suppose we'll be busy. Earth and Kvalari standing together, I could get used to that." Thraxis, observing the exchange, sent a private message to both commanders. "When our descendants look back at this moment, they'll wonder how we ever thought we could stand alone. Thank you, Admiral Trent. Thank you for teaching us that true civilization isn't about how long you've endured, but about who you're willing to stand beside." The combined fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading back to their respective worlds. Behind them, the Telrani Federation began rebuilding. And across the galaxy, other species began to take notice that a new alliance had formed, one built not on conquest or dominance, but on the simple principle that when someone calls for help, you answer. That was the legacy humanity had brought to the stars. Not superior weapons or technology, but the understanding that strength meant protecting others, that civilization meant standing together, and that the measure of a species wasn't how long they had survived alone, but how willing they were to ensure others survived as well. The Kvalari had learned this lesson at terrible cost, but they had learned it. And in learning it, they had found something more valuable than 12,000 years of proud isolation. They had found friends who would stand with them in the dark, allies who would answer when called, and a partnership that made both species stronger than either could be alone. The galaxy was indeed a dangerous place, but it was a little less dangerous now, because two civilizations had learned to stand together.